like to discuss with you the origins of Lent and Easter, and we begin with baptism. I used to think when I taught class, I would ask the children, what is baptism? They would say, it takes away original sin. And I was like, no, that's not right. Of course, it is right in a certain sense, but that's the last thing baptism does. What we should realize that baptism is intended as a share in the death and resurrection of Christ. St. Paul says we are buried with Christ in baptism and we arise with him in newness of life. He's thinking, of course, of the manner of baptism in the ancient world. Usually, not entirely, but usually persons were immersed. And when they went down into the waters, it looked like they were being buried. When they came up out of the waters, it looked like they were rising from the dead. And that's the reason Paul says, buried with Christ in baptism, rise with him in newness of life. And his whole theology is that our participation in the resurrection of Christ is through our baptism. So that, excuse me, when Christ rose from the dead, it wasn't just goody-goody, he proves that he's God and so on. It is that he communicates to us a share in his risen life, so that our lives, we are buried with Christ. What does that mean? Okay, we are temples of the Holy Spirit. We are members of Christ. We are heirs of heaven. And we are sharers in God's divine life. And all those things, we pulsate with this baptismal life within us. Well, so every year we renew our baptism, especially on Easter when we celebrate Christ rose from the dead, to communicate to us a share in his resurrection. When a Christian dies, he no longer, we used to say, well, we die in punishment of original sin. In a sense, that's true, but in the theology of St. Paul, we die in participation with and in union with Christ. Because he died and we are in union with him through baptism in his body, the church, we also give our lives to God in our last act of our life. And as surely as we die, as Christ has died, we are buried with him, we will assuredly rise in him because we are members of his body. So baptism, considered in that sense, is an active sacrament. It is a sacrament by which we become Christ, and by which our lives, we live out the life of Christ, and we give our lives to him in death, and we are assured of rising with him. And we celebrate this, we celebrate it every Sunday, which is the Lord's Day, the day of baptism, the day of baptismal renewal. And we celebrate most of all at Easter, when we celebrate the Easter Sunday. So as we go through and talk about baptism, Lent, Easter, penance, let's remember that primarily we're first of all concerned with the meaning of our baptism and living out our baptism.